Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I wanted to just start this by saying thanks to all of my patrons. We've been having some really great conversations going on about all of the Empire at War stuff that's coming up, as well as of course that new 2-player starter that got kind of sprung on us. And just to invite you as well, if you want to come and join in that discussion, and then of course get access to some exclusive videos and things like that, then you're super welcome to come and join that. And also just want to mention swdestiny.com, definitely my favourite single stop site for all the best information about Star Wars Destiny. Now then, I want to talk about cards for control that I see upcoming in Empire at War. Without a doubt, my favourite type of deck to play is a control deck. And so of course we would characterise that, I think, by trying to have as much say in yes you can do that opponent, or no you can't do that opponent, and having as much control over that situation as I possibly can. Now of course we have simple control tools. Straightforward dice removal is a very sort of obvious one, but there are a number of very good control cards that we see in the game anyway at the moment. So a really good example of that is Imperial Inspection, a very powerful card, and how that works really is essentially by controlling or helping you to control your opponent's board state. So without too much difficulty you can cause your opponent to not only lose upgrades that they've played back to hand, and then you could maybe discard them, but of course also it's that a sort of a futile sink of their resources. So with that being said, and with that kind of being a bit of an example, what we actually see, I think, in Empire at War is some very powerful events that look like they're going to make a really big difference in terms of the control cards that we have available for these kind of decks. Now the first one I'm going to start with is Fallback. Now Fallback has been spoiled for a little while, but there's no doubt about it. It's a really powerful effect. So from my Magic the Gathering days, and if you've ever played that game, you'll know that there's the sort of Wrath of God effect, which is that kind of board wipe feel. I mean, that pretty much just removes everything. Fallback isn't that. It's not going to hit things like supports, and obviously it's not going to clear characters. So what we do find then is that we've got a way of clearing off a whole bunch of upgrades all at once, leaving them just one. Now this really feels like it's only going to be strong against certain decks, but when you think about the standard meta, if you look back over the meta that we have played in, there are some decks that have used lots and lots of upgrades. Things like, like a Phasma deck kind of just relies upon getting lots of good upgrades into play, lots of efficient upgrades into play, so they can get more dice out. But then we also see decks like maybe Vader Raider, which hasn't relied upon having lots of upgrades so much, and has more relied upon events. Now, there will, I'm sure, be some decks that continue to do that. That's fine, you just won't need to play Fallback. But the fact that we have a card that can wipe out 6, 7, 8 plus worth resources, worth investment of our opponent's board, when of course we're playing with Fallback in mind. We're not playing a deck that's going to be full of upgrades if we're using Fallback, is really powerful. I mean, it would be quite difficult against a deck like a Phasma to lose if you clear off 3, 4 of their upgrades. I mean, that really is a huge amount. So for me, Fallback is massively powerful, because again, this is where I really like this kind of deck building around cards like this, is we can just look to our supports. If we want to get things like, we don't want to run Datapad, we would run something like Supply Line, because Datapad is, we're expecting it at some point to probably get wiped out, and so therefore we're more likely to use those kind of supports that are going to help us to achieve our aim. Now the upcoming meta might be quite support heavy, and so who knows, maybe fall back right in the upcoming meta won't be quite so powerful, but I would also argue that I think there's a lot of decks that will be powerful that won't use supports. Maybe not at first, but as that meta settles and we get into October and November and come to Christmas time, I think you'll start finding a lot more people starting to use less supports and exploring more of the other options available. Fall back is going to be really good then, guys. Okay, another card. So we've got Coercion. Oh my goodness, this is such a cool card and very funny. So Coercion reads, I'll have it come up here for you. Spot a yellow character to reveal an opponent's hand and choose an event in it. They must play that event as their next action if able. Now there's some very standard things that you can do with this that are just going to be annoying. So for instance, the one that immediately jumps to mind is forcing an opponent to use removal on their own dice. I mean, if you haven't rolled any dice into the pool and they've just got, I don't know, 2 Vader dice in there, and you pick Overconfidence for them to play next, well, they're re-rolling their Vader dice and removing one of them, okay? Or whatever character it is that they've got. As long as you haven't rolled anything into the pool, they're going to have to hit their own dice with removal cards like that. I think probably something very expensive is really good. If they're a deck that's building up lots of resources and you can make them play a card that they really don't want to play, it's not helping their board state in any way, but it suddenly uses up a bunch of resources, this is where something like Fallback could really bite you. Maybe they've only got 1 upgrade out and you've only got 1 upgrade out, it's early game, but you've managed to get up to 4 resources, maybe using an Unkar or something like that, and then they hit you with Coercion and make you play Fallback. Ow, that's going to be really painful. However, this Coercion, I think the funniest example that I've heard is you could use it to make someone play Price of Failure, and they would end up having to kill one of their characters if, of course, they can play it. So there's some really powerful things that can happen with that. Now, of course, Coercion could be something that you play and you don't hit anything with it. That's going to be really annoying. You've used up a resource, but if you compare or combine that card with quite a few of the characters that you might be likely to play it with, then you've got a good, you could play something like Friends in Low Places first and have a look at their hand, and then that can help you decide whether you want to play the Coercion or not. There's a whole bunch of ways in which you can have a look at somebody's hand with the cards that we've got available, and then work out what's your target for that Coercion. And again, of course, there's always something extremely powerful when you're also combining that with the fact that you've made them discard a card, almost, you've made them have to play that. I mean, it's even worse because, of course, you can manipulate that effect essentially to bring back your own benefit. They're not using it in the timing that they want to. So in a sense, there's almost this, well, they've lost that card to use it when they wanted to, so it's kind of been a discard effect. They've probably potentially also lost some resources, and their game plan is a little bit messed up. And if you hit something massive like Price of Failure, probably their whole game is messed up. So Coercion, I think, is just a delicious card. It's exactly the type of card that I love to play, that's super frustrating to deal with, and can be really hilarious depending on what you manage to hit. Now, another card that I think is going to be quite powerful in a sort of control-y type deck is EMP Grenades. Now, this is the only upgrade of the cards that I'm looking at. And the reason I feel quite strong about this is that special is discard a droid or vehicle from play. Now there's probably going to be quite a lot of vehicles coming up in this upcoming set, and if you combine this with, say, something like the ATDP. Maybe you're playing like a villain build. Let's say Thrawn Unkar, which I think will be very good fit for these kind of cards. Man, with the EMP Grenades and with the ATDP, if you go up against anything that's running supports or the vehicles, with these kind of cards around, that's going to absolutely shred it to pieces. It's going to be very difficult for them to keep what they want to keep on the board. And if you're also running something like fallback, you can see how you can start to have, I like to call these decks nope decks, where it's just simply nope, you can't have that. Nope, you can't do that. Nope, you're not allowed to have that. Because there's this feeling of no matter what they try and do, you're going to deal with it, you're going to get rid of it. Looking at older cards, the kind of cards that you could be putting into this is things like confiscation and disarm and those kind of really awkward removal, get rid of things type cards that stop your opponent building their board state. A choke style deck in many ways. And if you've got something like EMP Grenades, which of course has also got, it's got two sides of disrupt, that's going to fire off your Imperial Inspection if you're playing with that kind of build. It's got the 2 discard on. You've got to pay 1 for it, but if you're playing a very control-y deck, if you're playing a Thrawn Unkar or an Unkar something really anything, or a Thrawn something anything really, you're going to have resources for this kind of thing. So all of those things combined, it feels to me like a very good control upgrade. And at 2, it's probably priced right. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive. Certainly not when the fact that it could also get rid of a droid. And let's face it, that's really nice for just getting rid of 3PO. Really nice, because he is a pain if you're up against 3PO in anything. Now the next card I want to talk about is Feint. This is actually a simple card, and really, I mean, I think there's probably some deeper uses for it, but to me, it's straightforwardly get 2 goes at your character's activate ability. That's really what we're doing here. Now it does cost 1, but man, there are some cards, there are some characters out there with activate abilities that I do not mind paying 1 for. Paying 1 for Vader to just discard another card again, like no questions asked, that's just what's going to happen. I'll pay 1 for that. Thrawn's ability being able to do that twice in a turn, that seems very, very strong. That you could, I mean, you could friends in low places, and then you could do Thrawn twice. I mean, that's really, really disgusting. Look, I mean, and you probably don't even need to do friends in low places, especially if you know the deck you're playing against. So you could really destroy someone's hand pretty quickly with using Feint like that. But of course, kind of any characters really, they've got some sort of activate on them, it's going to be strong. Especially if you combine it with the fact that there's also cards like Hate now in the game, which is an upon activation type ability. And so therefore, you could potentially do that twice in a turn, plus if they've got a good, if you're putting Hate onto Vader, you're getting good value out of that Feint going off. So, and again, for me, that's easy ping damage. Or the new Kylo that got spoiled, that is out now in the 2-player set. I'm not used to something being seen so quickly and then it being available. Yeah, lots of really strong ways to play with Feint, but that's because there's lots of good when activated abilities. And finally, I want to talk about It Will All Be Mine. So this is a blue villain card. It costs 3 resources. Turn each of an opponent's dice showing a blank to any side. Well, that's quite strong already. However, they could just then re-roll it. Oh no, they can't, because then resolve any number of those dice in the order of your choice as if they were your own. This, similar to fallback, is the definition of blowout to me. That's enormous. Not only can we're removing those dice, but we're turning them into reversals. Every single one of them. And of course, we get to choose what type of reversal takes place, not what they rolled out. Now, of course, they have to roll the blank out. And this is one of those cards where you may not get to play it in 2 games, maybe in 3 games even. But when you do play it, it'll be amazing. Now, does that mean it's competitive? Well, I think it depends on really what you're going to use as your threshold for playing it. Because to me, this is a card that feels in lots of ways like Feel Your Anger. Now, Feel Your Anger is a card from Awakenings that we used in lots of blue decks and still use in lots of blue decks, and it is brilliant. It only cost 1, and again, it creates that effect of it's a blowout turn. If you hit 3 or more dice with that against most decks, that's effectively going to shut down their turn. So that's a brilliant card. But what you're always dealing with that is, do I play it now? He's only got the 1 blank. I'm only going to hit one die with that. Well, it depends what die it is. I mean, if that's a Poe die, and they could, I'm going to Feel Your Anger on that every time, because that's a big, high impact, powerful die. If that's a Vader die, if that's a Luke die, I'm going to get rid of that. If that's a Slave 1, I'm going to hit it with my Feel Your Anger. Now, do I want to pay 3 resources to turn that Vader to its 3 damage side and then return it to the dome of the person who's just rolled it out? Well, actually 3 resources is steep, but actually I'm probably going to be quite happy to do that in quite a few situations, especially when I'm playing a control build that wants to have lots of resources. Like, this is the aim of a deck when you're playing control cards. I'm not going to randomly stick this in a Vader Raider. This is going to be in a deck that's built to be controlling these dice. Now, if I would consider doing it over the 1 powerful die, I feel like if I get to do that on 2 dice, that seems like it's going to be fantastic. But the top end of this is I could do it to 5 dice. I mean, this is blowout, is going to win you games if you're playing it. I'm saying that. How frequently it'll win you games, I'm not sure. But actually, I think, and this is really the question is, what build does this fit? If you're running a build where you can regularly make resources with it, like you're consistently hitting those resources, and if you're consistently able to maybe manipulate dice into blanks, that feels pretty strong. I mean, I think where you can be clever with a card like this is, let's say an opponent rolls out 1 blank, and they roll 5 dice out and they roll 1 blank, and then they roll 1 good die. Well, if you manipulate that and do some form of manipulation to that good die and turn it to a blank, they might do something else before they try and just re-roll those 2 other dice. They may have another character they want to roll out, they may have a support they want to roll out and get involved before they start pitching cards. That's when you can really hit with this. And this is one of the things that I think makes a card like this really powerful, just in terms of the fact that it's in the card pool. Think about it. If you're playing now against blue villain and they have 3 resources, if you roll any blanks, you have to play around the fact that they could have that card. Like, you are going to end up thinking, well, I didn't want to discard now to re-roll. Like, I want to roll this other character out first. But now I've kind of got to, because I have to respect that this card's there, because if it goes off, it's going to ruin my round and probably kill a character potentially. That's enormous. And it comes back to this principle of threat. If you can be playing a deck that threatens to do lots of things, that's where control is super, super powerful. And I firmly believe that once a player has been on the end of even just one of their good die being hit with "it will all be mine," and seeing what kind of impact it can have, let alone if there's two or more dice, players are going to have to start being much more wary of it. They're going to have to start thinking about, well, actually, I better attack his resources and get him down to two or less, and hope he doesn't have feel your anger. But this is it. I think we're getting to the point now with all of these decks where we've now got a big pool of cards available, and the better players have to be aware of what's going on and what cards could be played on them. And the fact that this one is around, is really good, especially if you're playing, in Blue Villain, we've got good ways of manipulating dice to turn them to blanks, which gives you extra value. And if you can get any kind of, if you can get like a force speed effect and do some form of manipulation, and then this, or maybe you tactical mastery to do some manipulation and then fire this off. Now of course that's a lot of resources, but again, it's blowout. It is blowout. And I think this is running at the risk of people going, I don't think it's too situational. It just won't be powerful enough. Guys, I think there are some dice I'm happy to play this on just one of, let alone if I could get two or more, or however many. It's strong. So there's just 5 cards that are upcoming in Empire at War that I think will have a big impact upon the type of control decks that we can play. I think there's enough tools, well, even just there that I mentioned, let alone obviously there are other good control cards as well, that are going to mean that the meta that I'm anticipating with Empire at War is going to be bigger, it's going to be more varied. I'm really hoping that we find several decks make it to that tier 1, and not only that, I would love it if there is different archetypes. And my feeling is that with the control options that we've got available here, and the cool kind of characters that are such good control type characters like our Thrawns and our Unkars, I really feel like there is some very, very strong control builds that are going to be really difficult to deal with. And whether they choose to make their win condition a mill, or whether they choose to make their win condition some sort of big combo type thing, or a set of supports that are just big and do the damage very quickly. Again, I think there's multiple ways to do it, looking at the card pool, and that's what I'm excited about. Whether that'll come to fruition, whether there'll still be just a bit too much action cheating speed, time will tell. But I am optimistic that I think with all of these 3 sets now in play, plus the 2-player with some good cards in, control really could be in the running up at that tier 1. Anyway, until Empire at War hits, keep enjoying your destiny.